Where do you live? A lot of us live here in Pembury. It's in Kent. You might have heard of Kent. It's been in the news the last few days. Where do you live? And have you ever asked the question, where does God live? Well, do you know what? God lives in heaven. And yet the Christmas story is about how God came down from heaven to earth. Have you ever seen the film E.T.? If you haven't, it's a classic film from the 1980s. It's about when E.T., an extraterrestrial, ends up on Earth by accident. His spaceship comes down, but they leave him behind by accident. But when God came to Earth, it wasn't an accident. And it wasn't like he wasn't at home here. He became one of us. Yeah, it wasn't an accident. And you couldn't really say it was an emergency either. It was an operation that God had planned for a long time. It was a planned procedure. And it was necessary because, you see, God knew that people were sick. They needed healing. They needed help. They needed surgery. And so God had planned this operation since the beginning of time. I wonder, have you ever prayed about something and then God doesn't seem to answer? Do you know what? God does answer prayer, but just sometimes He doesn't do it in our time. He doesn't do it the way we expect Him to do it. God does it in His timing. And when God does something, He does it properly. He does not take any shortcuts. No cuts, not cuts. Get it? You know the story of Bo Peep? She lost her sheep. And it was like that for God. His sheep had got lost. They'd gone astray. So God thought, I want to send someone to go and find them. Send a shepherd to bring back the sheep into the flock. He had a plan. He sent his angel, the angel Gabriel, to a young lady called Mary. Took her totally by surprise. Said to her, you're going to have a baby, and that baby will come and be the saviour of my people. He'll come and bring my people back. She was a young lady living in Nazareth, and she was due to be married to someone called Joseph. She became pregnant with the baby, but then something happened. So Mary and Joseph were told that they had to travel from Nazareth to Bethlehem because there was going to be a census taken of the whole Roman world. They were counting all the people in the Roman world. So they travelled from Nazareth all the way down to Bethlehem. But how did they travel? How did they get there? I don't think it was by horse. They didn't get the bus because the drivers were all on strike. And I'm sorry to disappoint you, but they didn't get there by reindeer either. Tradition has it that Mary travelled from Nazareth down to Bethlehem on one of these. Mary was heavily pregnant, and so she would have sat on top of the donkey and gone all the way down to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, they couldn't find a place to stay. There was no room at the hotel. It was all booked out. Had a swimming pool and everything. It would have been great, but it didn't work out. And there was no room for them in the inn. There was no room anywhere else, so they had to make do. And they ended up laying their baby in a manger, a cattle's feeding trough. Now, it may not have been in a stable actually. It might have been in someone's house. In those days, they had the animals in the house with them, but it was humble circumstances. And they laid the baby in a manger. And the baby was a little bit like this one. This is made into a flower bed, but it's like a feeding trough. And interestingly, this is dedicated to Marjorie Polly of this village, who, getting off for 500 years ago, gave her life because she loved Jesus so much. Well, Mary had been told that this baby born to her would be king. And when the wise men eventually turned up, they said, where is the one born king. In a manger, king. Do you know, we've had loads of kings over the years, even in this country. Like King William IV, there's been other Williams, there was William the Conqueror. And all their reigns have lasted for a certain period of time. But this king would reign forever. Yeah, this king was like no other. He was the King of Kings. He still is the King of Kings, the top, the premier. Joe, this was such good news. This was something really to shout about and let everybody know about. So the angel then came to some shepherds. They were out in a field. They were looking after their flocks. And the angel came and said, I've got good news to proclaim to you. This day, a Saviour is born to you. And he's Christ the Lord. You can go and find him lying in a manger in Bethlehem. And so off they went to find out about this good news. And when they arrived, it was just as the angel had described. The baby was lying in the manger with Mary and Joseph there too. So wherever you are this Christmas time, and most of us are at home, just know that God has come to be with you. You're not on your own. He's come because he wants to be with you and he loves you. He's King forever and he's here.